Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm so excited for as it's one of my favorite videos to make every single year. That's right, today I'm going to be recommending some of my favorite romantic reads. Now, I am a big softie. I love romance, I love straight up romantic novels, but I also especially love when a story or novel has a great balance between romance and other aspects of the plot and story. So with that in mind, I will say I have some fantastic romantic reads to recommend today, but pretty much all of them also have other aspects of their plot paired alongside what I think is a super well-developed, drawn-out, angsty, delightful, romantic storyline as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first book I have to recommend is the Elements of Cadence duology by Rebecca Ross. And in my personal opinion, I feel like Rebecca Ross is one of those writers right now that like anything she releases is not only amazing to read, but I also feel like she has found the perfect balance of like romance, romantic storylines, as well as like really compelling fantasy plot lines as well. But the Elements of Cadence series is a duology that is amazing from beginning to end. The first book is called A River Enchanted. This is a multi-POV tale centering a very mysterious and magical island that has like elemental magic, and it also is cursed. Basically, some point many years ago, the island was basically separated in half, and people living on either side of this island hate each other. As a result of this, the island is cursed. One side of the island has very lush landscapes, plenty of food, plenty of water, but the magic there is very, very dangerous and hurts the user. On the other side of this island, magic is plentiful and very, very powerful, but resources are incredibly limited. And this sort of curse has persisted through time, and so has the hatred that has existed on both sides. At the beginning of book one, we're introduced to one of our main characters, Jack, who left this island that he grew up on to become a bard, but he's called back home to help in an investigation because a variety of young girls are going missing on this island. From there, we watch Jack as he works with his like childhood arch nemesis, also just get involved in the politics that exist in this land, as well as the stories and magic that live here too. This again is multi-POV. We read from a variety of characters and get to see the unfolding of a variety of different relationships, which are all beautiful to consume. This duology is heartbreaking, and I also feel like just balances so many different components of it so well. I love the romance in this series so much. It's very much soft boy meets hard girl with like strong exterior, and it's so well done. There's also so many other beautiful relationships at play here too, not only romantically, but also between friends and family members that I just love to read so much. And the fantasy plotline of this was absolutely so compelling. I loved the first book, but honestly, the second book was even better, not only in the romantic storylines, but the fantasy plotlines too. Yes, this is a fantastic duology to pick up if you're interested in romance, if you're interested in fantasy, and especially if you're wanting to kind of dip your toes into the fantasy space, I highly recommend this. The next book I have to recommend is a great fantasy option if you're wanting something a little more steamy, a little more angsty, and expertly drawn out, and another one that also houses many different romantic storylines that I personally cannot wait to consume, and that book is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. This was one of my sleeper favorites from last year. Everything about this book just absolutely drew me in. I could not put this book down. But another perfect example of a fantasy book that has great fantasy elements, but also a deliciously done fantasy subplot line as well. And this, I would say, veers more on like the steamy, angsty side versus like the pure romance side, which Rebecca Ross is more known for. And it was just so hard to put down once you started the story. But this is currently a dual POV fantasy book, and it's set in a fantasy landscape that is a city-state. Here, merchants sort of rule the day. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of powerful people, but the landmass itself is small and they don't really have an army. So how they sort of maintain their power is through trade agreements. In this book, we're following our two main characters. The first is Kel, and he is an individual called a sword catcher, basically trained from a young age to not only be able to impersonate the prince, but also stand in for the prince if danger arises, and inevitably possibly also die for the prince. The other main character we follow is Lynn, and she is a healer, and she's also part of a cultural and religious group that is extremely ostracized in this world, forced to follow not only a completely different set of laws, but also live separately within the city itself. Lynn gets involved in some magical situations. Kel and Lynn's paths do cross, but I will say, This book is not straightforward at all. The politics are delicious and the romantic pairings are so unexpected and beautifully drawn out. Like, there's gonna be so many different things happening in this book, and I was absolutely on the edge of my seat. The tension, the drama, the forbidden romance that exists within this, delicious. Paired again with great fantasy writing, great world building. I want more, and I want more books like this. I want it all, you know what I mean? Next is a romance series if you're looking for something that's cozy and lower spice, and that series is the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett, the first book being Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This book is so delightful, so fun, so charming, and it's guaranteed to put like a smile on your face. But in this story, we're introduced to our main character, Emily Wilde, and she is one of the foremost experts in fairies, and she is a professor at Cambridge. And at the beginning of book one, she is currently almost finished with like her life's work, which is this Encyclopedia of Fairies, which documents not only all the fae in the world, but all the stories and their culture that goes alongside these stories. And she is traveling to a faraway village to sort of hopefully capture the last remaining stories that she needs. And she travels there, but Emily herself is a little bit awkward and she's struggling to sort of get the information she needs from the villagers. And she's especially frustrated when her coworker arrives named Wendell, who she personally does not like, despite his strong interest in her. He very much gives like Hal from Hal's Moving Castle vibes. He's charismatic, but he's also flighty and vain and hilarious in all of the best ways possible. They begin to work together, and they also get drawn into this fairy plot that begins to take over the village. I love this series so much. First off, Emily Wilde is such a great main character. She is so knowledgeable, and all the academic writing centering the fairies throughout this book is so good. I also feel like this series didn't even need to be as good as it is with the fantasy writing and the fae lore and backstory. It really could have focused all of its attention on the delightful slow burn romance between Emily and Wendell, but lucky for us, we get both. So I love both the fae storylines, the action, and just like learning more about this fantasy world, as well as seeing the slow growth of the relationship between Emily and Wendell. Their dynamic is so cute and endearing, and I had a blast not only in book one, but also book two. Next is a book I've definitely featured in past like favorite romance videos, but it's just truly one of my favorite books that's severely underrated. I just want to talk about it every single day. And that book is The Beautiful Ones by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This book is truly for anyone, especially if you love romance, but if you love Pride and Prejudice, this is truly the book for you and you must read it. The society, the drama, the parties, the little walks, the will they, won't they, the intrigue, all of it I absolutely devoured. I read this book in like under 24 hours and it swept me away. I love this book so much. But in this story, we're introduced to our main character, Nina. And Nina is about to debut in society, and she dreams of becoming a part of a select group of socialites called the Beautiful Ones. Nina, though, sort of stumbles right out the gate because she has a magical ability which she has a hard time controlling, which results in her sort of embarrassing herself at a recent party. However, though, at this same party, she also runs into a mysterious man who makes a living performing his magical powers, and she's quickly drawn to him and wants to learn from him and also hopefully gain better use of her own magic. He himself readily agrees to begin training her, but he has a secret himself, and that is he's actually in love with Nina's like cousin-in-law. Nina is currently residing in the home of her like beloved older cousin, and he's married to this very beautiful woman, and this man, Hector, who Nina meets, is in love with her. And from there begins a ride that is full of so much melodrama, so much heart and romance and love and betrayal. It is delicious. It's impossible to put down. And all of these dramatic elements are also happening within all of the best locales, from balls to society parties to dinner parties to garden parties, all the parties, as you can imagine. And so much is said in what is unsaid, and it's just delicious. I ate this book up. It's so romantic. It's so well written and beautifully written. I love this author so much, and this is one of my favorite books of hers. Again, if you like Pride and Prejudice, you have to read this book. Another book that's absolutely full of melodrama in all of the best ways possible is The Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. Isabel Cañas is one of my current favorite writers, and I feel like she is able to create stories that are full of such romantic longing, so much angst, and just like such a believable, heartbreaking, heart-rendering romance between our two main characters existing in all of her stories, but surround those characters with like horrifying elements. She basically makes like romantic horror stories, and I love every single second of them. Her first book is The Hacienda, and this book, The Vampires of El Norte, centers, as you would guess, vampires, but not like the cute and sparkly ones, but instead the terrifying ones. But also centers a beautiful and devastating romance at the core of this book too that I ate up completely. In this story, we're introduced to our main character Nina, who lives on her family's ranch near the border between Texas and Mexico. The story takes place in the 1800s, predominantly around the time the conflict between these two countries really began to heat up. And Nina knows a thing or two about monsters in the night, not only because when she was a child, she was attacked by something that nobody knows exactly what it was, but now present day as an adult, she has known so much loss and heartbreak, particularly when it seems like monsters are attacking not only people living on her property, but the surrounding properties in her town. Again, war between Texas and Mexico are also heating up as ranchers are trying to protect their land from being seized by a foreign entity. And Nina herself also runs into an unexpected person that she was never expecting to see again, reigniting love and heartbreak from her past. This book is all about monsters in the night, monsters in the daytime, expertly weaves together history with horror and fantasy, but again, has such a compelling cast of characters you will love individually, you will love together. It's also dual POV, rotating back and forth, that quickly pulls you into this absolutely unputdownable tale of love, loss, and monsters. I adored this book. I want to read everything this author puts out. She's an expert. I mean, combining terrifying vampires with romance, it works perfectly. The next book I have to recommend is kind of another unexpected, very romantic story, and that is This Is How You Lose the Time War. This book is honestly so unusual and in some ways feels like it shouldn't work, but all of the pieces just work so well together that it just creates such a romantic and delightful picture alongside some really horrifying background scenes. But let me take a step back. This story centers our main characters, Red and Blue. They are each on opposing sides of something called the Time War. This conflict has existed seemingly since the beginning of time, and agents on either side have been fighting against each other, trying to foil plots of the other. They're literally all of time and space, in the past, in the present, in the future, on different planets, on different timelines. Like, there's so many different things happening. Red and Blue are each side's respective, like, best agent, and they've also been kind of fighting against each other for a very long time. But something shifts one day. They actually begin to write letters to one another in the backdrop of their very dangerous, very violent work. And these letters are like a thing of beauty. In them, they're really just getting to know each other, beginning to understand each other, and ultimately fall in love with one another. And the contrast of these dark, despotic, sort of sci-fi landscapes we sometimes find our characters in, to these like beautiful, simple letters that they're exchanging back and forth is so good. This book is very clever, very well written, very unusual, but the whole thing just works so well, creating such a beautiful love story. I'm also a sucker for any type of romance-centered story that uses letters as the primary vehicle to express your feelings. I just love it. I love letter writing. What can I say? And the last book I have to recommend is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This book is so cute. If you love fairy tales, this is the book for you. It's charming and fun and lighthearted, and definitely a story that doesn't take itself too seriously. But in this book, we're introduced to our main character, Evangeline, and at the beginning of this book, her heart is broken and she doesn't know what to do because the love of her life, or who she thinks is the love of her life, is about to marry somebody else. So she decides to turn to the one entity she feels like can help her, and that is the Prince of Broken Hearts, which is basically like the god of broken hearts. And he agrees to help her under one condition, and that condition is she must give him 3 kisses of his choosing at the time of his choosing. She readily agrees, and everything from there absolutely turns upside down. Fast forward, Evangeline now finds herself to be one of the most desirable ladies in all of the land, and she is fighting off suitors left and right. She also gets wrapped up in like a competition to marry a prince in a faraway kingdom, and when she arrives there, she quickly realizes that something much more complicated is going on because, hello, surprise, the Prince of Broken Hearts is also there. This book is just so charming and very much reads exactly like a fairy tale. Evangeline is a really cute character to root this book. She's naive, but very, very easy to root for, and you just like want her to find love, life, and happiness, you know what I mean? The Prince of Broken Hearts is definitely very capricious, and he's a fun character to root this story too. He has good and bad qualities as you would expect with a godlike character, and just all of the antics of everything ending is delightful. Like, it's a straightforward, fun story that I flew through and was just so unbelievably charmed by. I plan to read books 2 and 3 very, very soon, but I love book 1. And if you're looking something that very much centers like romance and courting and balls and princes, this is a great book to pick up. Alrighty guys, those are my current favorite romantic reads. Please let me know down below some books you love that are romantic, as I would love to know. And I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!